are so back. We are so back. 3 straight wins for the first time since the start of November. The Vancouver Canucks are back, and so are we. My name is Dave Quadrelli. That is Harmon Dial. Our technical producer, the man at the controls, is Grady Sass, and this is Canucks Conversation live from the iconic Sheraton Wall Center in downtown Vancouver. Canucks are back, Harmon. The Canucks are back, and it feels great to say it.
Rolling wagon, certified wagon. Right. We're back on the rails. It's pretty crazy. Who would have thought that second week of December, heading into the holidays, the Canucks have the best goal differential in the NHL.
Mm-hmm.
I would have thought the only way that would have been possible is if the Abbotsford Canucks were leading the AHL in goal differential. No way I thought that this roster would have been capable of that, but to see them bounce back after a stretch where they were mostly playing 500 hockey against two pretty good teams, first the Carolina Hurricanes, and of course they haven't been playing their best, but still that's a team that on paper is Stanley Cup contender material. And then the Tampa Bay Lightning, yeah, they're not the same team that won back-to-back cups, but this is still a team that has a star power to, if you're having an off night, they're going to kill you, especially with the way Nikita Kucherov has been rolling, Andrei Vasilevsky back. So for the Canucks to not only win, but process-wise, have really complete performances at even strength, not allowing a lot at 5-on-5, really, really impressive stuff.
We'll break it down further, but before we do that, we need to tell you that today's episode is a presentation of the HSBC World Rugby Sevens, Western Canada's largest sporting event, and this year is the 9th time the event has visited Vancouver as part of the World Rugby Sevens series. HSBC Vancouver Sevens, where high-caliber rugby and the ultimate party weekend collide. SVNS truly is a sporting event like no other, and a weekend you won't want to miss. For 3 full days from February 23rd to 25th, BC Place is going to be the place to be. 12 women's and 12 men's sevens teams, including 2 Canadian squads, take to the pitch for 3 full days of jam-packed rugby and partying. Tickets on sale now at vansevens.com, starting from just $40 per day. Harmon, if you were going to this event, which we might, what costume would you wear? Because the costumes, that's a big part of this event, is people wear their best costumes. Go get your best costumes ready for this event, folks. But what would you wear? Like, I think Faber one year went, I got to text him. Hopefully he's watching the show. Jump in the chat if you're watching, Chris. I think one year Chris went as like a Teletubby or something. I might be misremembering that. I'll ask him. But what would you dress as?
Oh, man, I'd have to prep that because I'm usually the guy that just scrounges up whatever clothes are in my closet and somehow is like, yeah, this is my costume. One year I went and I literally just cut out 3 with construction paper, 3 circles, put them on a dress shirt and said, yeah, I'm 3 hole punch version of Jim from The Office.
Oh, boy. Come on. You got to do better than that.
One year I have a green bomber jacket and I have aviator shades. So I just bought green pants and I was like that guy from Top Gun. I haven't even watched the movie, but
I haven't either. Grady, you watched Top Gun before?
I have not either.
Wow.
And I had it on VHS as a kid and I don't know, it just never appealed to me.
Isn't that the one with Tom Cruise?
Yes, it is.
Top Gun. Wait, so what do you mean VHS? It came out in 2022.
No.
There was an OG version.
That was a remake.
Oh.
Come on.
Okay, I at least know that.
Should have known that.
Showing your age here, pal.
A little bit. Just like the person on the Canucks Reddit yesterday, subreddit, asking if Luongo was as good as Thatcher Demko.
Are you serious?
Did you not see this? This
No.
was on. I saw it on the Canucks Reddit experience on Twitter. Shout out that account. It's an awesome account. But there was a person who posted, no shame to the person. Everybody can be a fan whenever they want. We're not trying to exclude anybody here. But it was funny because I had people messaging me saying, was this you? Did you post this? Because the question was, for those of you who got to see Roberto Luongo play, obviously going up in the Ring of Honor tomorrow night, was he as good as Thatcher Demko is? The short answer is yes, 1,000 times yes. And the most impressive thing about Luongo in my mind, and Grady, I'll get your thoughts on this too, is that he was able to change his style of play like 3 times. From the era where everybody was still doing stand-up, he came in to some extent, like, the butterfly had obviously been invented by the time Luongo came into the league. But you look at Luongo's first game, the style that every goaltender, including Luongo, was playing. Then you go look at 2011 highlights. he's doing the VH, right? He's into the VH every time he hugs the post during that 2011 run. And Jonathan Quick at that time was like the only goalie in the league doing the RVH. And then I don't know, I want Woodley on the show to ask him exactly when this was, but by like 2014, I think everybody, including Luongo, who was still in the league at that point, had adapted and changed into the RVH as their main stance. And one of you is going to have to stop me talking about goaltenders at some point, but he is definitely like, I don't know. In my mind, he's a top 3 goaltender of all time.
For me, it's the durability, right? The workload that he was able to carry. I'm looking here, 4 seasons where he played over 70 games in a single year. Nobody in today's NHL can do that, stay healthy, and remain productive. I mean, Thatcher Demko, for as talented as he is, we know that he breaks down a little bit if you overplay him, as any normal top, upper echelon goaltender does. And yet with Luongo, he could play endless amounts of games and not break a sweat, seemingly.
All right, it's not anyone else, but we're getting to this listener contribution. This is from Viper's Whip. I love it. Viper, thank you for contributing. This comment is a heater. Demko is better than Luongo. How many goals went right along the ice, going through his pads, and bleep? He was a 90s goalie. I have watched every Canucks game since 1986. Viper, I will respectfully disagree, but I appreciate you putting your opinion out there. I think, especially Viper, bear with me here. You've watched since 1986. Think of how much everything changed. I know you pointed out a 90s goalie. Luongo wasn't a 90s
He played
goalie.
like, what, 2 seasons in the 90s?
Well, I think what Viper's saying is that his style was 90s, but I would just flat out disagree with that. I think Luongo, what made him last as long as he did in the league was that he was so good at adapting his game. And I think that's something that, I don't know, like, I'm curious to see who the next goaltender to really do that is going to be. Because, I don't know. Like, obviously we have to wait, but the game's always changing where goalies do have to change up their style a little bit. But just, and look, like, I'll defer. I'm not giving you my opinion here, Viper. I'll defer to a guy like Ian Clark, who would hands down tell you that Roberto Luongo is one of the best goalies of all time, any generation, doesn't matter. And again, I haven't spoken to Ian Clark about that, but he's told me all about working with Roberto Luongo and what a tireless worker Luongo was and all that sort of stuff. But I'm saying top 3 goalie. I think he goes Hasek, Patrick Waugh, and Roberto Luongo.
And if you remember those first few seasons when Luongo came to Vancouver, they essentially constructed the team around him bailing, the defenders and the rest of the team out nightly. They were drying up on offense. That was kind of the transition from the West Coast Express era to the Sedins. They hadn't quite become those prolific scorers yet. So a lot of the nights, he was making 35, 40 saves and standing on his head. It was only until a couple of years later when Kessler tried to, he went beast mode and Burrows, and you saw some of the depth come through. Those first few years, Luongo was standing on his head was the reason why they won so many games.
Grady, the chat's wondering if you're cold. You brought the parka.
It's very cold in the studio. Yes. If I take the jacket off, then I'm freezing. I'm a little warm right now. I think it's all your hot takes.
You got anything under that jacket? Okay.
Yeah, just shirtless.
Okay, Grady, I love it. Thank you for that. This and Viper went further, and people are going to lambast me for just talking to Viper here, but I like this. He said, "I'm saying Demko can make saves. We saw from Hasek, not his work ethic and being a great goalie. I am saying Demko is a technically better goalie." I don't know. I have time for it. Everybody's going to think Viper's off his rocker. I have time for it. I have a little bit of time for it, but no, Luongo is the best goalie.
I don't think he's necessarily wrong, but you have to think of where the evolution of the position was at that time.
Yeah.
Goalies have never been technically as savvy as they are now. Luongo, when he first came up, relied on his reflexes, whereas Thatcher was always a positional first, efficiency movement. Like talks about eliminating half the crease, like you would often see Luongo scrambling on his stomach, trying to make those desperation saves. You don't really see that out of Demko, but again, kind of a different era of goaltending.
Also, Talk to me when Thatcher Demko starts like 70 games in a season.
Well, that's the other thing too, right?
Yeah, no,
Like,
we're not gonna continue with this. We have to move on. Harmon hasn't gotten a word in.
quickly, Demko career 911 save percentage, Roberto Luongo 919. I know it's a bit of different offensive era, but what is Demko's high watermark for wins? And I know wins isn't the end all be all. It's 33. Luongo did that kind of on his off years, or maybe when Schneider was starting to take away some starts. So
yeah,
I think you could make the case technically.
The part about technically sound and like the technique that both guys used, I'm willing to listen to because Thatcher has such good technique,
but he's still early
over the years too.
He's still earlier in his career, whereas Roberto Luongo is a Hall of Famer. Demko has to still reach that potential.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to cut you off, Grady. I brought this up as a joke 3 minutes into the show, and we ended up talking about it for 10 minutes. And
show's off the rails.
The numbers are already dropping. People are leaving. Harmon's getting ready to leave. But no, let's move on. Well, move on. Let's move backwards to talking about last night's victory. Harmon, Brock Boeser scores a hat trick. Andrei Kuzmenko gets on the board. Let's start with Brock Boeser, who with 21 goals is now tied for with Austin Matthews for the NHL league in goals. And folks, it is December 13th.
Yeah, it's pretty unbelievable. And when you look at the 2 goals that he's scored outside of the empty netter, to me, what stands out about this season is just the variety of ways that he's scoring. Any team that's pre-scouting him and going, how do we stop Boeser? How do we stop Vancouver? They can't look at 1 or 2 types of plays that Boeser is especially feasting on and go, well, if we make this adjustment, we're going to completely deny him, because the first goal, of course, is just a rebound goal in a greasy area, which he has such a knack for always being open on the doorstep for those rebounds in a spot where goal scorers should never be open. And I think that speaks to his hockey IQ, his timing, his anticipation, how he reads plays, an increased willingness to get to the front of the net. But then also the goal that he scored off of Quinn Hughes' feed, that type of snipe from distance, we haven't seen that a whole lot over the last couple of seasons. So when you have both of those aspects firing, not to mention he's created so many chances from the bumper in the power play, which he over the last month could have easily had more goals from that middle of the ice on the man advantage. He's just creating so many good looks. I mean, there was a stretch about 2-3 weeks ago where he was generating a ton of chances off the rush as well, and was unfortunate not to have, picked up maybe an extra goal here or there as well. It's remarkable how many different ways he's scoring. And outside of just the offense, he's also taken a massive step forward in his defensive play. Last season, as much as we want to talk about the lack of offensive output, Boeser's defensive metrics were the worst of his career. At 5-on-5, when he was in the ice, the Canucks were just getting shelled, and not just some of the worst defensive numbers in his career, but of all NHL forwards. When you look at how many shots, how many chances, how many goals against the Canucks were allowing, it felt like he was stuck in quicksand with the skating. There were a lot of turnovers from the defensive half wall, lackluster back checks. He wasn't able to win board battles anymore on the forecheck. He was sort of a liability in that sense. Whereas this season, it's been a night and day difference. We're seeing him go up against, alongside Miller, of course, the opposition's best players, hold his own in that sense. Even the setup that he had in the Minnesota game on Miller's goal, Höglander and Boeser digging the puck out on the forecheck, Boeser having the poise, the sense to find Miller in the slot coming off the bench. Those are the areas that are ensuring that his line is spending more time in the offensive zone so that he can actually apply some of his skills.
I find it really interesting that you brought up that he's scoring in so many different ways, because I saw a few people on Twitter last night. I thought it was a fine point. It's a good point to make. They were saying we haven't seen Brock play like this for like 6 years. Since his rookie year was the last time we saw him score like this. And I mean, I would disagree to some extent. He's only 8 goals off of tying what he put up in that rookie year where he would have hit 30 if he hadn't had the awful back injury that ended his season prematurely at 62 games. 29 goals in that season. He's already up to 21 through 29 games. Just another chance for me to point out that I told everybody in August that this guy was scoring 30 this year. Even I didn't expect this. I just thought he was going to finally hit 30. The thing that I want to hone in on is in that rookie season, he wasn't technically scoring like this. That goal, and Viper actually, there's another good take from Viper in the chat, pointed this out, and I wanted to highlight this. Boeser took down Chernak in a battle and got clear to score that goal. He didn't score goals like that in his rookie year. The one where he batted in on the backhand, batting it in on the backhand because you're at the front of the net, because you're in the dirty areas, he didn't really score goals like that in his rookie season. So you brought up the defensive play, which is an excellent point. There's a big difference between rookie Brock Boeser and even last season Brock Boeser compared to this season Brock Boeser. But right now we're seeing a guy putting it all together in all areas of the ice and also adding new elements to his game as a goal scorer. And right now we are seeing it, as the title of the episode suggests, Brock is back.
He's evolved. He's matured. Even little details like how effective he is screening the front of the net. Rookie Brock never did that, right? And rookie Brock Boeser was so exciting, so electric, so fun because he was just sniping bar down from distance every time. But as we saw in his sophomore year, that's not a sustainable way to score on a night in, night out basis, because once teams recognize it, hey, this guy's got a really good shot, they get the playbook on you, they see some tape, they're able to adjust and take time and space away from you. And I remember having conversations with Brock in that 2019-20 season where he said, yeah, the time and space I would have to let my shot go in my rookie season, I've never had it again since. And so to me, it's really impressive that he's found a way to, in this season, top that goal scoring pace, considering how much more difficult it is to find that time and space. He's having to sort of improvise. And again, I think he's evolved so much in terms of how many looks he's creating from the inner slot, in and around the net, doing the dirty work.
Yeah. I want to pivot a little bit. Let's go to Andrei Kuzmenko, who scores a goal last night, opens the scoring for the Canucks last night. And we're not going to talk too much about him, but I want to give a shout out to Thatcher Demko, best goalie of all time to some people. He really held down the fort, I thought, late in that first period. And look, sometimes you need your goalie to bail you out with those two penalties that the Canucks took in the final 10 minutes of the period. Thatcher Demko was up to the task. People want the high danger numbers. It was 4, according to Natural Stats. I had it pegged at 7 high danger chances that Thatcher Demko turned aside, or 6 that he turned aside because he let a goal in that first period. So I thought Thatcher Demko deserved a shout out. But let's pivot. Let's talk about Andrei Kuzmenko, who opens the scoring by, you nailed it, shooting the puck. He shoots the puck on the power play on PP1, lets go of one-timer rather than just corralling it and looking for space, which we've seen him do so much over this slump. And the message that we've heard is shoot more, shoot more, shoot more, like get the puck on net. And there was that game two games ago where we saw him kind of hang on for a second too long, look for a pass that really wasn't there when he probably should have shot. So the fact that Andrei Kuzmenko's shooting is good, the fact he's scoring is better, and the fact that he followed that up with a really sweet back check on Steven Stamkos, where he tied up Stamkos' stick after a Filip Hronek turnover. A failed breakout by Filip Hronek led to a 3-on-2. And Steven Stamkos was in the high slot, and Kuzmenko was hustling back, tied up the stick of Stamkos, and negated the opportunity completely. That was the best of the three things that I just mentioned, in my opinion, of Kuzmenko's game.
Yeah, the Canucks power play was zipping around the puck with such crisp passing, good movement. The only worry, or not worry, the only potential issue you can run into when you are zipping it around that dangerously, that effectively, is at some point you got to shoot, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes you run into a trap where you're passing so cleanly, it looks really pretty, but you're not able to, like, you're looking for the perfect play rather than just trying to get some type of, even if it's a medium danger scoring chance. Obviously, you don't just want to spam a point shot, but at some point you just got to direct it towards the net. I find it interesting that Tocchet in discussing before the Tampa game, the power play's recent slowdown, was mentioning that they need to adopt more of a shot first mentality. So it isn't just Kuzmenko on an individual perspective, regaining the confidence to be more assertive, be more direct, but it's also taking the coach's message that, hey, as a unit, we need to be more direct. Kuzmenko recognizing that in an in-game situation and applying the coach's lesson for that unit to help not only him get off the schneid, but get the power play going again. So that, to me, is something that he, desperately needed. You could see the relief on his face. And it's always so funny when you have a player that's been struggling to score, produce offense. It doesn't matter if they're a first line player, it doesn't matter if they're a fourth line player. As soon as they get a goal, they just have so much more pop, so much more energy chasing down pucks. They look so much faster. It's as if getting that goal just jump starts every other part of their game, which is funny because oftentimes when players are struggling to score, coaches are trying to harp this message of, okay, you need to nail the little things and then you're going to start to score. Whereas in reality, oftentimes it ends up being the opposite, where sometimes you need that break to go in so you feel good about yourself. And then it's easier to execute on those little details because you've gotten the reward. You don't feel like you're as much, you're as under as much pressure, which you could definitely see with Kuzmenko. As soon as he scored, you could see him zipping all over the ice. Where I'm like, he's never really done this.
Fact checking.
Yeah,
never really done this. We have a clip here from Rick Tocchet last night post game. This was Rick Tocchet when he was asked about Andrei Kuzmenko, and this time he was okay answering a question about Andrei Kuzmenko.
He's had some energy tonight. He's been shooting. Actually, Gonch is here. Then he's been spending time with Gonch, shooting a lot of pucks. He shot a lot of pucks the last 3 days, and there's no sense in him shooting that puck. He scores. We're getting him to shoot the puck more. Hopefully, in practice now we have to translate in the game. But I just thought he had more energy tonight. It's a good little building block for him.
A good little building block for him. Anything else you wanted to get to on the game before we get to anyone else? Actually, I got a prospect report first. But do you want to say anything else about the game?
Yeah, I just wanted to say another fantastic game for Nils Höglander.
Yes,
out there with Tampa pulling the goalie. Höglander's on the ice defending that lead. He's taken such big strides this season in earning Tocchet's trust. You go back to the Minnesota game, and he had, by my count, 3 big defensive plays holding the lead, which is the Carolina game where he had, the diving poke check, winning battles, good changes. That's why Tocchet was able to roll him back out there so late in that Tampa game, holding the lead. And not only that as a sign of the progress he's made, but also offensively, there were 2 or 3 instances where he was able to use his speed off the rush to get behind Tampa's defense, drew that penalty on Eric Chernak driving to the net. Really, really effective, strong game for him, continuing to be effective on the forecheck below the hash marks. I was, again, really happy with his performance. And it's such a good story for a player that for a while there, you wondered about his long-term organizational fit.
Yeah, and I really like that Rick Tocchet is keeping the bar high for Nils Höglander, because Corey Anderson pointed this out. He said Tocchet wasn't as happy with Höglander as the media was. Talked about several giveaways last night, and that's what Höglander needs to avoid. And I think Rick Tocchet's a good coach to be able to keep Nils Höglander accountable and not let him get away from what's made him successful, and continue focusing on those little details. I don't think Höglander's not going to be able to take his foot off the gas if he wants to stay in the lineup. And I think Tocchet is really going to help him with that.
There was one play, I think it was like the first or second, minute of the game. Miller flips the puck up at the zone entry, and Höglander, like a dog on the bone, just goes straight in as the F1 forechecker, retrieves it. I can't remember who the Bolts Lightning were, but like they created zone pressure at the very start of the game just because Höglander hustled and he won a puck battle behind the net. And so much, they play that dump and chase style. You got to go back and actually get the puck to make it effective. And it's just incredible to see like a guy listed at his size. What is he, 5'8"? Like low center of gravity, and how strong he is along the boards and kind of his whole puck pursuit. And he complements Miller and Boeser so well because they can all kind of play that, succinct zone time possession cycling game behind the net, but then they also get it to the front of the net like we've seen on so many of the goals. I think it was the first Boeser goal, whereas that Hronek tip shot from the point, Miller kind of tipped it, got the rebound, put the shot on, and like all three of them are right in kind of the crease creating havoc. And that's exactly what you want to see from him in the ozone. Now there's things they still got to clean up defensively, Hoglander, that is, but it's a great sign.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's get to the prospect report. I know people are going to be wondering about Frank Seravalli. We pre-recorded with him, so we are actually going to close out the episode later on, and then we're going to play the pre-recorded Frank Seravalli interview, so you'll be able to hear that if you stick around. If you don't want to stick around, it'll be out later on the podcast, wherever you get your podcast. And if you're new here, folks, we got a good number of listeners today. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, and the notification bell will let you know when we are going live, and I'll let you know as well. Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. every day, we are live on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. So if you're on the podcast listening to this and you want to get involved in the YouTube live chat, check us out. 2 p.m. Monday through Friday. And we will, of course, be back tomorrow talking about Roberto Luongo and a few other things. But quickly, I wanted to get this in. This is our prospect report brought to you by our friends at Four Winds Brewing, family owned and operated in Delta, home to the Four Winds Light Lager, a crisp, clean, and easy drinking beer, a beer for everyone, a perfect beer for before, after, or during the game. Ask for Four Winds Light Lager at your local liquor store or have some delivered right to your door through the online shop at fourwindsbrewing.ca. Are you going to the game tomorrow, Harman?
I don't think so. I think Giants is going to be at it.
So I strong-armed Wyatt Arndt. Wyatt really wanted to go to the game. And I said, no, sorry, man, I'm the boss. I get to call the shots, and I'm going to the game. It didn't go exactly like that. Hold on.
No, I believe it went exactly like that because I can see Wyatt on a game in, game out basis on some of the worst nights of the year, some of the biggest losses, riding the Stanchies, ready for the big Roberto Luongo night, and then the boss that isn't really involved in doing the Stanchies is like, I'm calling an audible here. Yep. I'm going to the big ceremony night.
That's right. Well, look, okay, Wyatt's been sick lately, so I've been having to go to every game, and if he can't go, I got to go to the games. And he texted me, and he's like, who's going to the Luongo game? And I said, well, now you want to go to a game. And in all seriousness, I was trying to figure out what was best. I can't get to morning skate, and he really wants to see Luongo and talk to Luongo. I was like, okay, well, go in the morning. So anyways, Wyatt and I figured out a happy medium, but he said, you didn't even watch him play like I did. And I said, I saw him on the TV machine when it wasn't a school night. And then we had a good little back and forth, but we figured it out. Everybody's happy. But I'm very excited to go to that game tomorrow. In all seriousness, to see the banner unveiled kind of thing. Or it's not a banner,
kind of thing,
but dropped, the banner that's covering the, oh, you got your mic's on, Grady. But sorry about that. The banner covering his
you mean the Ring of Honor?
Yeah, what do they make it out of though? That's what I'm curious. Like his, his Ring of Honor portrait. Yeah, what is it? I was listening to Donnie and Dolly today. They said that Harold Sneps once fell down, which is right above the press box. Yeah. Anyways, a little Canucks history there for you. I want to find
secret plot to take out the negative media.
Yeah. Put it right there. Yeah. No, we'll figure it out. We'll figure out the answer to that at some point. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, the prospect report and Four Winds Light Lager. Tomorrow is going to be a perfect time to drink some Four Winds Light Lager as you watch that ceremony. I don't even know where I was. Prospect report.
Previewing the Anaheim Ducks game.
Yeah, the Anaheim Ducks. All right, quick prospect report here. Abbotsford lost both of their games this past weekend, and I'm focusing on the goaltenders. They're continuing to rotate both goaltenders. So Archer Seelovs and Nikita Tolopilo both lost by a final score of 4-2. Both guys played pretty well. Seelovs made 32 saves. Tolopilo made 31 saves. Very curious to get Dave Hall's thoughts on who's maybe pulling ahead, because right now looks pretty neck and neck out there in Abbotsford. And I'm curious, what's happening with Zach Sawchenko, because he is in Spencer Martin territory where he's just not playing because the Canucks have two young goaltenders that they have a long-term interest in. So both of those guys are rotating and both of them are playing quite a bit. And obviously Archer Seelov's had that huge month of November where he was named AHL goaltender of the month. So just something to keep an eye on. That was a very quick prospect report, which is how I like him.
I was going to say, I think you're the only person in this market that's worried for Zach Sawchenko there.
I feel for the guy. We'll have him on the
Fair
show.
enough.
Good guy, Zach Sawchenko. Okay. Anyone else? Presented by DoorDash. It's our listeners' chance to get involved in his up in the YouTube live chat. It's also our listeners' chance to get 25% off and 0 delivery fees on their first order of $15 or more. That's right. For a limited time, our listeners can get 25% off and 0 delivery fees on their first order of $15 or more when they download the DoorDash app and enter code NATION25. That's all capital letters, NATION, and the numbers 25. Offer valid in Canada, subject to change. Terms do apply. Okay, we've got a few in here. People are wondering if I was even alive when Luongo played. Yes, I was. I saw him on non-school nights.
You weren't allowed to watch the Canucks on school nights?
No, I was. I was just joking. Although when I was really young, like I have a very distinct memory, and I have to go back and figure out what game this was. But I have a very distinct memory of I had like a old like alarm clock, like it had a radio on it type thing. You know what I mean? I'm just describing a radio. That was like right next to my bed, and I was like 5 or 6. And I figured out how to get the AM radio on, and I've learned where the Canucks game was. And like, no one showed me this. I learned. I don't know how I figured this out. I think I must have paid attention in the. I must have paid attention in the car or whatever. But anyways, I figured out I would go to bed and then I would turn the radio really low and listen. Like if a game went to overtime and I was like 6 or whatever, right? I would go listen to it and go listen to the game in overtime, and that was what I did. So yeah, my Canucks knowledge. Trust me. I saw Luongo.
Awesome.
I saw Luongo.
You heard Luongo.
I heard Luongo. Yeah. No, he was my favorite player growing up. I think we answered that yesterday, actually. Okay. Yeah. Osnuk asked a good question. Grady, maybe you can answer this. I know you got Italian relatives as well. Does anyone know why Luongo uses Strombone as a handle? I think it's something to do with Italian. Like, I'm pretty sure. Grady, do you know?
I have no idea. No.
It does not have a direct English translation from Italian. But anyways, my nonno has called me different names, and I'm pretty sure Strombone's been one of them. So I have to go ask him what that means. Anyways, we'll report back once I talk to nonno. Okay, let's get some actual anyone else's here. This one I'll let you answer, Harmon, because Jeremy Lee said Boeser is doing great because of stacked line mates that he gets to play with now. I would argue that Phil DiGiuseppe is not a great line mate that's pumping up Brock's numbers. And I'd also say, and I know I said those to you, but the quick thing I want to say is just that, you know, they're playing against top competition. And the reason he's there is because he's capable of doing that. And he's capable of playing, which, as you alluded to earlier, he wasn't capable of doing that last year.
Yeah. And I mean, you look at the top of the NHL goal scoring leaders outside of Boeser. You have Matthews, he plays with Mitch Marner, who's also, I mean, Marner's not having the best season this year, but he's an elite point producer. Kucherov gets to play with Point. Sam Reinhart's up there with 17 goals in 28 games. He plays with Alex Barkov. I don't think that's really a valid criticism of Brock.
How much of a template, this one from Jesse C., how much of a template is Boeser for what the coaches want Kuzmenko to be?
It is a really good template, I think, just in the sense of Brock earlier in his career definitely profiled as a pretty one-dimensional player where he's a goal scorer, but a lot of people wondered, even up in this offseason when I would speak to executives, team scouts outside of Vancouver, they'd look at him as a pretty one-dimensional player that if Brock's not scoring, what is he doing, right? To really drive, whether it's drive play, win battles, be effective on the forecheck, clean up his defensive play. And Brock has, to his credit, cleaned up all of that this season. He continues to be effective on the forecheck despite not having a lot of foot speed, which is something that Kuzmenko can draw from because Kuzmenko's never going to be effective on the forecheck the way Nils Höglander is, for example. He just doesn't have the speed. He doesn't have that same level of tenacity, whereas Brock is a more realistic template to follow in that sense. Same thing in terms of cleaning up his defensive habits positionally, better puck management. Yeah, I actually do think that Kuzmenko can learn a lot from Brock's evolution.
Also, on the topic of line mates, don't forget the Lotto line. That was the best line that Brock Boeser ever played on. Some other good ones in here, and I'm really liking this. This is a lot of really good interaction from the chat. So thank you to everybody who's interacting with us. This one from DM Payne: would Höglander be better utilized with Petey or JT? Now, this is a really interesting one for me because I feel like every time we've seen Nils Höglander play with Elias Pettersson, he's gotten into that territory of maybe being a bit too cute and trying to do a little bit too much and maybe not shooting when he has the opportunity, hanging on to the puck for a second too long, trying to make the finesse play. I wonder if that's because he was playing with Elias Pettersson or if that was because that's who Nils Höglander was like up until 2 weeks ago, right? Like, I'm curious if it would be different this time around with Pettersson, just the way we've seen Höglander play lately. I just think that right now, don't mess with something that's working. And right now, Nils Höglander is working with JT Miller.
Yeah, and that line has such a simple identity. It's easier for Höglander to make that adjustment from jumping up from the fourth line to a top six role, where I'm sure the message from JT is, look, don't worry about making fancy offensive plays. Just use your speed, get behind the defense, win battles, get me the puck, and we're going to be a hard-working line that crashes the net, controls the puck. And yeah, we can pull off skilled plays. We definitely have the talent to do that, but it's a pretty simple, direct message for how you're going to have success. Whereas with Pettersson, it can, I mean, on the one hand, you can argue that, I mean, Lafferty plays a pretty direct north-south game, and he's found it not too difficult to produce on that line. So yeah, I mean, maybe Höglander could work, but I could also see a scenario where, because Pettersson's a more methodical player, because you have to learn a little bit how to read off of him, how to get open, that there could be a bit more of an adjustment. Whereas, I mean, this has felt like a seamless fit right now for Höglander on Miller's line.
Okay, we're going to close out the segment here with this one because I'm going to segue it into my anyone else, because apparently somebody else also experienced what I experienced last night in a way. This one from Jesse C. Surprised at the post-game comments from Talk complimenting Juleson? Is there any chance he becomes our Jalen Chatfield, a cheap 6D on the PK that frees up money elsewhere? We're not focusing too much on that. Rick Talk, it was complimentary of Noah Juleson once again. He has been lately, and Noah Juleson has played a lot better than he was 3 weeks ago when we were wondering why this guy was even in the NHL. My anyone else is that I got a text from my brother who was at the game last night, doesn't watch this show every day, doesn't pay super close attention to the Canucks, watches most games, but texted me and said, dude, who is this Juleson guy? And I said, what do you mean? And he pointed out, he goes, he was one of their best players. He used the Talkit quote, the thing that Talkit won't even say, best player. He called Noah Juleson one of their best players. And I said, I don't know how to tell you this, man. He's not one of their best players. I promise you he's not. He goes, no, man, that dude's got so much heart. He was laying the body. I was like, oh my gosh, my brother is, yeah. Anyways, Juleson played well. It was just funny that, someone pointed out that Talkit, they were surprised that Talkit spoke well of him. My brother thinks Noah Juleson's one of the best defensemen on this team, or he thought he was at least last night.
Well, I owe Juleson an apology because about 3 weeks ago, I was saying that I didn't think he deserved to be in the lineup. And based off his form at the time, I certainly think the results back that up, where the Canucks had been outscored like 6-0 with him on the ice at 5-on-5.
This is quickly turning into a Thomas Drance apology, just so you know. You started with, I owe him an apology, and then you started throwing out stats of why you were right at the time.
No, I'm trying to point out that my criticism wasn't anything personal. It was grounded in something objective.
Yep.
Right? You threw me off there. But anyway, man, I'm trying to be nice and you just... Anyway.
Well, we were just before the show, we were listening to Tom with Dollywall, talking about points percentage. Within 5 seconds, we were having a good laugh about that. That points percentage got brought up.
Okay, where was I?
Sorry.
But yeah, so since then, he looks a lot more poised, making decisions with the puck on the breakout. Early in the season, it felt like he was just panicking and immediately getting rid of it, turning it over quite often. Whereas now he has a little bit of composure. He can hold on to it for a split second, just long enough so that he can make a decision. Whereas in other situations, if there is pressure and he doesn't have that time, he's able to recognize, make that read faster, and make a quick up. Right. So credit to him for that. He absolutely has been laying the body. He's been blocking a ton of shots, effective on the PK. Don't know how long it'll last, but it's been great to see. And the longer this goes on, I mean, he would, be an asset for this organization, considering how little he makes against the cap, if he's able to keep this up.
Yeah, and while I pointed out it was turning into a Drance apology, you were absolutely right at the time when we made that kind of statement, and we did. We both agreed that he probably shouldn't have been in the lineup at that point, but man, it's going to be hard to take him out of the lineup. And further, big picture, it kind of makes losing out on Ethan Bear, which Jim Rutherford said this morning they did not expect would happen. They expected to be the front runner. They really thought he was coming back. Rutherford spoke on Donnie and Dolly earlier this morning. It kind of makes losing Ethan Bear a little better that it's not 3 weeks ago. Like 3 weeks ago, if we get told that Ethan Bear's not coming back and Noah Juulsen's going to be in the lineup for a bit longer, that's a lot more troublesome to hear. But right now, with the way Juulsen's playing, it definitely becomes a little bit easier to stomach Ethan Bear's not a Vancouver Canuck.
Definitely. And Bear is probably a 5-6 defenseman. So if Juulsen can keep this up, then I think he can be a perfectly handy number 6 defenseman. It's just sometimes with these depth defenders, you don't know whether a stretch of good hockey can last, right? You look at Mark Friedman, for example, immediately after the trade was really solid, really steady. And he looked like he should be in the lineup every night as a number 6 defenseman, but then his form fell off at one point. And that's at least now having Friedman as a depth option, at least if Juulsen further down the line does falter, you have him as an option. And of course, at some point you're going to get Carson Soucy back as well, which gives you another option. So yeah, I think the Canucks are well positioned for now.
Okay, we're going to end on 2. Anyone else? I know we said we close it out. We're going to end on 2 quick. Anyone else here? This one from Chris M. Who did you pretend to be when playing road hockey / mini sticks? I always liked the funnier names. So I was always Miroslav Satan or Alexei. I don't even know how to say that name. But for Van, I was always Murray Barron. Murray Barron. I did not expect that name to get brought up on today's show.
By the way, isn't it Miroslav Satan? Isn't that how you pronounce it?
Sure. Yep. I almost called him Satan, so you're doing better than I did.
Miroslav Satan and Alexei Zhitnik.
Yeah, there you go, Zhitnik. Why? Yeah, okay. Anyways, Murray Barron is what I want to focus on. The Murray Barron. Someone pointed out in the chat. Murray Barron, the poor man's Brian McCabe, which is another great name. Okay, so the reason I know a lot of the older players is from playing the older NHL video games. Like, you would go through and play like NHL Hits 2002, which I've been playing my whole life. Like, I still have that game. I still play that game. It's so much fun. And you just go through and you're like, oh, I didn't know this player was on that team or whatever. It was interesting, but I always pretended to be Roberto Luongo, had an older brother. So yes, I always played goaltender whenever I played hockey.
I played a lot of goalie as well, and I also pretended to be Luongo.
Well, I'm sure Grady has the exact same answer, so we won't even go to him. Yeah. And then the last
one. It actually started as Dan Cloutier because he was the first Canucks goalie. So
I love it.
I love
it.
Goalie, the starter of my favorite team. I was like, yeah, even though he wasn't that good.
So
I always had a soft spot for Cloutier.
With that logic, are there any young children out there who are in 20 years when we're the bitter old media and they're doing their podcast on TikTok or whatever? Are they going to be like, yeah, I pretended to be Anders Nilsson because he was the starter at the time when I was playing mini hockey? Let me know if there's anybody out there or your kids pretending to be Anders Nilsson out there.
Maybe Jacob Markstrom. I could see that, but no, not an Anders Nilsson.
In Calgary, I bet there's lots of those now, right? That's their guy.
Yeah.
He went out and signed him. Alex Auld. Danny Samarin.
Oh, that's a name.
Some
I haven't
great
heard in a
names.
while.
We should play Puck Doku on the show. I've gotten better at Puck Doku. A lot of fun. Anyways, someone said Pavel Dimitra. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. Rest in peace, Pavel Dimitra. Okay, here we go. Yeah, okay. Chris with another one here. Who do you think is the Eastern team interested in Andrei Kuzmenko that Dollywall reported? My guess is Washington. My guess is also Washington, Chris. If I had to guess, definitely Washington.
Yeah, they desperately need top 6 scoring. They're going to get Pacioretty back at some point, but they already have Russians on the team, so it would be a pretty comfortable situation. The power play is dead last in the NHL. They, I think they're either 31st. I actually want to double check this.
Take your time because
they're 30th for goals for per game, despite being in a playoff spot right now. So they could desperately use some more offense.
Clay Stevenson, they signed him to a 2-year deal. So I wish the Washington Capitals all the success in the world. 2-year extension for former Coquitlam Express goaltender Clay Stevenson. Coquitlam's in town tonight. They're playing tonight. Check out the train station. Okay, let's move on here. That was a lot of anyone else, and we really appreciate it, folks. Don't forget, we're going to have Frank Seravalli in moments here. But before we do that, we got to close it out with Betway. Grady, pull it up. Betway. Our bet of the day. Harmon hasn't seen this yet. It's an absolute heater, folks. If you're feeling confident about that guy in the lead for the NHL goal lead right now, go throw some money down on Brock Boeser to win the Rocket Richard Trophy at plus 1,200 odds. That means a $10 bet returns you $130 over at Betway. It must be 19 plus to play. If you choose to play, please play responsibly. How you feeling about that, Brock Boeser?
I highly doubt he'll actually win it, but those odds are not bad. I think they're pretty realistic in terms of a decent risk to reward. The thing to keep in mind is, of course, Boeser has never played at this type of pace before. He's also shooting 27.3%. So whereas you look at somebody like an Austin Matthews, he's been there, done that, and he's only shooting 18. I shouldn't say only, but he's shooting under 20%, really close to his career average clip. So his scoring pace seems more sustainable and in line with what he's done in the past, which I don't think you needed me to tell. I don't think anybody needed me to say that. That's pretty obvious, but yeah, that's kind of how I view it. Long shot.
Yeah, a lot of people in the chat agree with you. Matthews is going to win it. All right, we'll close it out there. Let's actually go to Frank Seravalli. But for those of you who won't see us afterwards, I'm going to say bye to you right now. For my co-host Harmon Dial and our technical producer Grady Sass, my name is Dave Guerrelli. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Canucks Conversation, as we throw now to our interview earlier today with Daily Faceoff's Frank Seravalli. All right, Frank Seravalli joining us now, brought to you by the VGH Millionaire Lottery. You have until midnight, Friday, December 22nd, to get in on 51 early bird draws in the VGH Millionaire Lottery. These early bird draws are worth more than $200,000. Win an Audi e-tron GT or a private jet experience that includes 20 grand in cash or $125,000, plus 50 winners will win $1,000. With your VGH Millionaire Lottery tickets, you get in to win one of 10 grand prize options, or you can take $2.7 million in tax-free cash. Don't forget to get your 50/50 plus tickets. Every ticket purchase supports VGH and the UBC Hospital Foundation. Order in person at London Drugs or online at millionaireLottery.com. 19 plus to play. Know your limit. Play within it. Frank, have you ever won the lottery in any form? Scratch off, anything like that?
Just $20 doesn't count on the scratch off, does it?
I think so. I think anything above like 10 on a scratch off is like you have won the lottery.
I used to be like a degenerate scratch off player.
Nice.
Like I would go to the car wash, and while waiting for my car, I'd buy like $100 in scratch off tickets and just feverishly be sitting there scratching away, waiting for it.
And the most you ever won was $20?
Yeah, I mean, a ton of like free. You got a free ticket. You got a free. That doesn't count.
No,
By the way, I was thinking about the prizes. How amazing would it be if the private jet experience was on Francesco Aquilini's private jet, and you could ask him anything you wanted?
What would you ask Francesco Aquilini if you could ask him anything you wanted?
I'd ask him what it feels like to finally get things right. It seems you've got some people in place that are doing all the right stuff. It's taken you a while to get to this point. How do you find a way to keep that going? And by the way, the reason what made me think of that is when I was how old are you, Quads?
23.
And Harm?
23.
So almost exactly your age. I pitched a story of flying on Flyers owner Ed Snyder's private jet with him. And they said yes. And I did it when I was 23. And it was like 2 or 3 of the coolest days of my life.
Okay, well, now we need to hear stories about that because I've never heard about this. Tell us about it.
It was unreal. Like they just, he was getting inducted into the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame. He had already been in the Big Boy Hockey Hall of Fame for a while as a builder. And I sort of pitched the idea of like writing a story about what his legacy will end up being long beyond when he's gone. And now he passed away 6-7 years ago now. And it's still like, it was amazing to get access to him and his family. We flew from Philly to Chicago. I was with him all day during the induction, the party afterwards. Then the next day woke up and flew from Chicago to Washington and met the Flyers. And they played a game there against the Caps. And it was just a kind of amazing behind the scenes experience.
That's legendary. I mean, hey, we're 23. We're in that prime age that Frank was in when he did that story. Maybe we have to pitch it. You talked about him getting things right as owner of the Vancouver Canucks. I think one of those things is hiring Jim Rutherford as the president of hockey operations. His contract is up at the end of this year. All we've heard is that they're going to work on an extension. What's the sense you get there? And what do you think of the job that Rutherford's done as a whole since he became president 2 years ago now?
I think it's been pretty good in the sense that there's been a lot for them to work through, right? There's been, I don't want to say turmoil, but there was a lot of stuff to pick through to get to where they are now. On the ice, removing some contracts that were really problematic. Off the ice, hiring the right people, putting the right process in place, reducing a lot of the noise that existed around the team. I think the situation that had unfolded with Bruce Boudreau, who was hired by the owner, like that was a clear misstep that I think it took them a while to mop up. And I know fans don't like hearing that because they got so attached to Bruce Boudreau, but I think that path that the Canucks went down really took them a while to dig out from and get the right person in place in Rick Tocchet. And, you know, I wrote a story last week, a column that grabbed some Canucks fans' attention when I had said that Patrick Allvin deserves some consideration already as one of the front runners for GM of the year. And I felt kind of bad about the singular attention that seemed to place and focus on Patrick Allvin, because the truth is, if you really understand how the Canucks front office works, a big part of the aggression that they've shown has actually come from Jim Rutherford specifically. And he's really been one of those people that's been pushing this team to continue to evolve and improve and get better. And I don't know that as president of hockey ops, you don't necessarily get the credit. There's no president of hockey ops. There's no POHO award at the end of the year at the NHL awards. So he may not get some of that credit, but when you talk about his contract and where things stand, having the chance to get to know Jim a little bit over the years, like this is not something that's occupying much of his time, I don't think, or headspace. He's accomplished so much with the Stanley Cups that he's won, the pile of money that he has in the bank. I don't think he's sweating over his security. I think one thing that's really stood out to him is I think Vancouver has been a really good fit for his family. And I think that part of it has also re-energized him a bit, so to speak, behind the scenes.
Frank, with this outstanding start the Canucks have had, which player's reputation around the league has had the biggest glow up, whether it be a Brock Boeser, a Quinn Hughes, considering how many people used to perceive his defensive game, a JT Miller, considering how that contract extension was often discussed last year, whether it's a Filip Hronek. What are you hearing outside of Vancouver in terms of who's catching people's eyes?
I think the easy answer would be Brock Boeser, because the goal scoring, if you had told me on December 13th, and I know that he's played a couple more games, so it's not exactly an apples to apples comparison, but that Brock Boeser and Austin Matthews would be tied in the league lead in scoring with 21 goals this year, I would have said you're insane. This start to the season has been magical for Boeser, and there's no doubt about that. How good he's been, how they've just hit the back of the net for him. It's been wild to see. But I'm going to go outside the box, and I'm going to say, if it counts as outside the box, because you mentioned his name, but I'm going to say JT Miller, because there was so much negative attention focused around the potential trade and how close it actually did get to Pittsburgh, which was pretty darn close. The contract extension and how that seemed to be looming over the Canucks' heads. And then to come back this year and not just score and produce the way that he has, which has been excellent, but I really get the sense in talking to some Canucks players that are in the room on a daily basis that see everything, he's really part of the core fabric of this team and the heartbeat of it from a personality perspective that I think the Canucks are thrilled with that development and to see where he fits. You look at his production now and you say, oh, that contract, maybe the last couple years might not be very friendly, but right now we're okay with it.
Frank, what does Filip Hronek's next contract look like? That's the big question that we've been asking lately. What does his next contract look like?
I think it's a number that starts with an 8 all day long. I just like look at what he's on track to produce this year. And then let's just like game theory this out, okay? Because I started to dive into this a little bit with the S&P guys. But we didn't fully go ham on it.
Let's do it.
If you were to have Filip Hronek, just again, pure hypothetical game theory, go to arbitration this summer after I don't know, call it, let's say on the lower end, based on where he's trending now, 70 points.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not 85, it's not 75. Let's call it 70. Let's say he finishes at 70. Then you look at the minutes played. Then you look at his importance to the team. Like just go pure ARB stats. Like where does he end up? It's north of $7 million, I think, on a 1-year deal. So
continue.
So if you were to like then extrapolate that out further and say, okay, he's somewhere 7 or north on a 1-year ARB deal, to then purchase UFA deals, which is how the NHL marketplace works, and then take the term and add that into it, like you're again, I think you're looking in the 8s all day long.
Do you think the Canucks should pay that? Because that's where we start to have the hangups, is we've seen different times where Filip Hronek's defensive game doesn't look great, loses some 50-50 battles, and I'm not trying to poke holes in the guy's game like I was with Elias Pettersson last week when we had you on the show, but should the Canucks be paying Filip Hronek? Quinn Hughes' partner is going to make more than Quinn Hughes?
They're arriving at this juncture at different points.
Mm-hmm.
Hughes deal purchased a bunch of RFA years. This deal purchases UFA deals also at a time when the cap is going up. And this is why you guys can't have nice things, is because you guys are starting to poke holes at his game saying, well, should we pay $8 million a year? My answer is just go back and listen to Quinn Hughes' answer from the start of the season when he said point blank. It also may have been a slight knock at the Canucks, even though I'm not sure that he meant it that way. This is the best player I've ever played with here. Remember when he said that?
I do. And up until last year, that player was like Chris Tanev and Ethan Bear. So
that's
right.
why you could say that it's an underhanded, blow to the Canucks of what they've put next to him. Or you could look at it from a different perspective, which is the one that I would choose, which is Quinn Hughes has had a magical season. He's done it for the most part next to Filip Hronek. That person, that player, who, by the way, on his own 2 feet is having a, again, 70-plus point season, most likely. That person's worth their weight in gold if he makes your star defenseman shine even brighter, if he has a partnership, a tandem working together that is seemingly going swimmingly, for lack of a better term, why bleep with happy?
Yeah. The scenario we kind of kept laying out was, okay, you're going to get a chance to see what Filip Hronek looks like away from Quinn Hughes once Ethan Bear signs, which everybody in the market thought was going to happen. Jim Rutherford was on Donnie and Dolly this morning, and he pointed out, or he said, yeah, we really thought he was coming back. And he spoke about how he thought Ethan Bear was coming back. It looks like Bear is going to sign a 2-year deal in Washington. It looks like the Canucks are out on that. How much of a wrench does that throw in the Canucks plan that they don't get Ethan Bear at this juncture?
I personally would not have been banking on that idea, solely because I think that's how you get yourself into big trouble, is trying to wedge one player to play with another and hope and pray and wish that it works out. Again, let me take you back to what I just said. Don't bleep with happy. It's working. I know that you want, and at some point everyone is going to want, hey, we've got to see Filip Hronek play on his own 2 feet and carry a pair and continue to produce at the same rate that he has, in order for us to all feel satisfied about potentially paying him that kind of money. I sit back and I say, just let the magic unfold. Just enjoy what you have and how good it's been, and say, this is our pairing for the next 7 years or whatever the number ends up being, that we can just enjoy this.
Frank, I wanted to ask you about Andrei Kuzmenko's future. Scores last night, which must be great for his confidence. But given that Rick Tocchet seems reluctant to trust him defensively, how do you think the Canucks feel about Kuzmenko's fit on the roster? Not only for this season, but he's got another year left on his contract as well.
Yeah, I think it's a really tough spot to be in, because, I think I've seen the reports of Kuzmenko's name being out there. I think we all understand that this year has sort of been like square peg in a round hole in terms of his fit under Rick Tocchet. And it's clear to me that, I don't even know if trust is the right word, but there's some disconnect there between player and coaching staff that I don't know that those things ever really get rectified. And I don't know if it's possible to put it all back together again, but I think it's in the Canucks' best interest to try, because you think back to his season last year and how ridiculous that production was, and the success that he found basically as free money for the Canucks. This was always kind of the risk, that you have a great rookie season in the NHL. Everyone wants to see how it translates to North America, and you get the answer and it's amazing. And then you sign him to a commitment that the term isn't obviously too tough to handle, but it's at a way bigger chunk than it was last year, that if things don't go well, you're backed into this corner and spot. And look, I think it's been uncomfortable. I think it would also be a mistake right now to trade him when his value seems to be pretty low, as opposed to trying to rehab this a bit more.
You still in on Wendy's Daily Faceoff Survivor? I got eliminated yesterday.
I took the Yotes to beat the Pens, and that didn't happen. So
I'm looking at it. As far as I can tell, the Penguins beating the Coyotes was the only thing that happened yesterday. Out of all the picks that anybody could have made, Pittsburgh beating the Coyotes was the only one. So there are not many. There's 58 people left in the game this week. We've seen.
That's what I was gonna say. It's been an absolute slaughter. I think there's 38 left.
Yeah, you're right. It is 38. Me and 47% of people yesterday picked Florida to get 30 shots on goal. The 29.5 or over shots on goal. And we all got eliminated. And like I said, there's not many people left.
6.7% of the pool remains. I'd say this Wendy's Daily Faceoff Survivor game is no joke.
No, it's not. Got to be ready to go. Got to be on your toes. Just like when you get Elias Pettersson 5-on-5 play questions like we threw at you last week.
I truly didn't know what you wanted. What was the correct answer here? I'm like, does this guy want me to come in and start beating Pettersson with a mallet? Do you what? Guys have stretches in a season where you're just not everything is simpatico. Let's, big picture, guys. Stay out of this is so Vancouver. Stop it.
All right, Frank, thanks for joining us. We'll be sure to throw you some fastballs next week as well.
Sounds good.
Canucks Conversation with Harmon and Quads every weekday at 2 p.m. Be sure to check it out on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. And if you missed it, go check it out on your favorite